welcome to our 2026 winter release webinar. I'm super excited to go over everything that's in store for you in this release. We've got new enhancements to existing features, brand new features, security updates, as well as integrations. And that was a lot to remember, but this release is really that jam-packed, so I can't wait to show you everything that we have in store for you. Before we get to the exciting stuff, don't forget this recording will be available on the Revenova Learning Center on the events page. Another super exciting announcement, our user conference is June 2nd through the 4th. And I know our customer success and marketing teams have some great sessions planned. So if you're interested in any of those, definitely reach out to the CSM team and they'll give you more information on that. And then last but not least, if you have any questions during the demos, please use the QA button at the bottom panel and we'll address them at the end of this session. Now, a quick look into what we're going to see today. First, we have some enhancements to security within Revenova, which is going to help protect you from fraud and theft, which I know is a really important topic within the industry today. Another huge enhancement to our EDI architecture, which transitioned it to an event-based architecture. This is really going to be important for anyone that has large volumes and any sort of error handling. So great improvements there, as well as a new enhancement to Rate IQ, allowing you to mark up spot quotes that you get from our Rate IQ partners like DAT and Truckstop. An automated appointment scheduling enhancement. So I know we've been demoing the appointment scheduling. I think I actually did that last time. And this one's really going to help automate that solution for you to even make that a breeze for your teams. An enhancement to our existing load lock feature, giving you even more flexibility to pass those locks to different users. Some great enhancements to MacroPoint, our existing MacroPoint integration. And then last but not least, a new web service that allows files to be uploaded into Revenova. And then I would be remiss if I did not mention, in the winter release, we did do some great enhancements to Artemis in our AI offering within Revenova. However, we're going to do a fully separate webinar for those so we can really dive deep and give you all the great information on those specific features. So definitely keep an eye out for more AI and Artemis invitations that will be in your inbox shortly. All right, let's dive in. First up, we have Dave, who's going to demo some security enhancements in the Winter 26 release that are super important for strengthening data security and preventing fraud. Dave, take it away.
Thanks, Alyssa, and hello, everyone. The feature I'm about to demo, it's not the most exciting feature to show in comparison to some of the other enhancements that we have coming up for you, but we felt that it was important to include in the webinar due to its impactful nature. As Alyssa touched on, this is all around security enhancements, and the nature of this enhancement will likely require all of the system admins from our customers to review the user profile and permissions to ensure that things are working as appropriate. So what you're looking at here, I have kind of a side-by-side pulled up, our release notes, and also on the right-hand side, you'll notice a familiar page, the TMS admin page, and specifically I'm going to click into the new widget here, the new link that we have on the admin page for the required field scanner. And just to touch on really what we're looking at here, so Revenova has a wealth of automation and Lightning Web Components that drive workflows throughout the system. And in order to align with the best security practices, we made several changes to the underlying architecture of Revenova. And one of these primary changes, which will directly impact all Revenova customers, is a much more strict enforcement on field level security. So in previous releases of Revenova, of course, field level security was enforced, but there were ways that users could unknowingly get around these guardrails, whether that's through indirect, trigger-based, automation-based updates, or through unintentional escalation of privileges through an LWC component. So all of that said, really what does that mean to you? And basically for the Winter 26 release and beyond, Revenova has placed more stringent field level security guardrails in place, which will explicitly prevent users from making these types of unknowing, unauthorized changes. And so where this required field scanner widget comes into play is it's actually a tool to be used by system admins that will allow you to assess an individual user's access and to see which fields and objects they have access to and which they shouldn't. So let's take a look at an example here. So the scanner here, if I do a quick search for kind of the primary user in my org, which is myself, what you're going to see here is either a list of fields that I as a user don't have access to, or a list of fields that if I don't have access to, I will have issues or I will run into issues as I use the TMS. So of course, as I look at Dave Romanchuk here, I'm a system admin, which means I have basically God privileges so I can see everything, which is why you see in the widget here, user has all required permissions. Now on the reverse side of things, if I look at our friendly Chatter expert user, which is really a much lower level license and access user that comes standard in most Salesforce orgs, what you're seeing here is a list of all of the parent objects and corresponding fields that this user is missing permissions for. And so what does missing permissions mean? Really, what that means is throughout the application, again, as you all know, there are a number of different widgets and automation where fields are updated. And what this widget is outputting is a delta between what permissions this user has in comparison to a brand new permission set that we created. I believe it's called TMS baseline permission, and you can look at that in the setup menu. But essentially that baseline permission set is the permission set that grants access to every single field in the TMS if a user were to use every single widget throughout the application. So for example, the first big object that you see on the page here is the AI model training record object and the various fields associated with that AI model training record. That's all in regards to our Artemis AI initiative. So of course, if you're not using Artemis today, or if this particular user isn't using Artemis, then perhaps they don't need access to these fields. But ultimately what we're trying to display here is if your user is in fact using Artemis, then this user would need to have their permissions adjusted so that they don't run into issues as they're using Artemis or really any of the objects and fields that you see listed on the page here. Carrier quote is another good example, carrier service, so on and so forth. So like I said, we're continually evaluating our cybersecurity policies for the betterment of our customers, and this is just the latest iteration of that activity. Alyssa, back to you.
Thank you for taking us through that, Dave. I know the security scanner is going to be a really important tool for our users. Next up, we have Scott, who's going to take us through the revamped EDI architecture. It really is going to help with scalability, improve error handling, and just overall faster transactions with EDI. Scott, take it away.
Thank you, Alyssa. I wanted to talk to you guys about one of the bigger features that we have in our Winter 26 release, and that is our migration to our REST API for our EDI connections and our migration to JSON format. To start off, this is a big undertaking that we have for this release. EDI is obviously a very integral part to everyone's day-to-day operations, and this is going to be a huge efficiency gain for everyone who does EDI on a day-to-day basis. The biggest reason why we did this is because it's going to be faster and it removes a lot of the EDI run frequency bottlenecks that a lot of people have been running into when they're using our current state EDI. We no longer call out to our EDI partners. They actually call into us. And that actually helps out with our efficiency gains because they can set those run times and make sure that they're sending out as frequently as possible, which they have better functionality on being able to do that more frequently than we do within the Revenova environment. They can manage it on a per client basis on their side of things. So you guys can work with your vans to actually set that up within the van. We also have better validation and logging, which I'll show you a little bit more of what that means later in my presentation here. There's going to be a lot of me talking as opposed to me showing you guys, but we do have a little bit of show and tell at the end of my presentation here. To talk a little bit about the inbound EDI side of things, we actually do not use the EDI job and the EDI run frequency anymore because the van actually decides how often they're going to be pushing the inbound EDI events to us, which is great news for you guys because you can work directly with them to set that up. And then essentially what we do is we can process up to 200 events at a time, and they can send that as many times as they want, as opposed to waiting for our job to run again, pick up another 200 events, and then run it back into our system. So if you're getting something like 600 events at a time, you don't have to wait every 5 minutes or however long you have that EDI run frequency set. They can just start pushing those in, and we'll start processing them as quickly as we possibly can. So it's going to be a huge efficiency gain for anyone who has a high volume of inbound EDI within the system. And then for our outbound EDI, the EDI job is still relevant to some of those outbound events, but we queue them as EDI transactions within the system. And what's great is that we actually can queue 2,000 events at one time. So still great efficiency gains on that side of things. And then we will actually tag those with a success message on an EDI transaction so that you guys can see the success messages that are coming back from your guys' vans that you're working with to see those messages going out successfully to them. And something great that's coming with this as well is that we're going to be logging each one of these EDI transactions within the system. And so there's no need to turn on transaction logging for each individual event. They don't necessarily need to be linked to a specific load. We're going to log every event that comes into the system. We're going to mark it with a success or a failure message. I know one of the big hangups about EDI is that error messaging can be a little bit confusing and not user-friendly when it comes to what that error message says. So we've done a really great job of focusing in on what each one of those error messages from EDI means and translating it into a readable way for a user to look at it and really understand what's wrong with either the transaction or the setup for us to properly be able to direct you into what to fix to make that transaction a successful message within the system here. So I can show you kind of how that will work. And I'll show you what our packet replay looks like as well within the system. So this is what a typical EDI transaction might look like. This is a 214 transaction that I've just mocked up within our system here. It'll look something like this. And then we have the status message here. So what's going to happen is when it's created, it's going to be set in that pending status until it's either picked up by for this example, it's an outbound 214, or it could be an inbound 214. It'll be set in a pending status here, and then we'll mark that with no status log here at all. Then if it's processed successfully, it's either going to be processed as a success here, and it's going to be linked to a specific load, or it's going to be set as a failure here. And then we'll give you a status message on what that error is. You'll be able to make any adjustments within Revenova, or you could work with your van to make an adjustment and resend it back to you guys as well. And one last thing to note on the new upgrades that we have with the EDI is our data cleanup job. Given we're storing all the transactions, and I know that storage is important to so many people, we've added this data cleanup job to help you guys manage your data so you guys can set a specific time frame on when you want those additional transactions to be deleted from the system so you guys aren't taking up too much storage. That's it for the updates that we have in regards to the REST EDI updates. I know the one big question that everyone has on their mind is your current EDI process going away immediately? The answer is no. We can work both of these different types of systems in the current Winter 26 release. One important note, though, is you can only do one or the other. So you have to do all or nothing, REST or SOAP for this update here. So our recommendation is get upgraded as quickly as possible. We'll help you guys with that transition to our new REST EDI service. Work with us. Make sure you're working with your van to get that testing and upgrading done. And we're really excited for this release to help you guys streamline your EDI processes. Back to you, Alyssa.
Thanks, Scott. I know that one's going to be a game changer for our users. The ability to handle higher volumes and then reprocess failed transactions is going to be awesome. All right, next up, I'm going to be demoing our RateIQ plus markup feature, which you all know and love our RateIQ LWC, which allows you to take the output rates, the market rates, from DAT and Truckstop and other partners, and then see those spot quotes on the load. And in a previous release, we made that same output available outside of the load, so completely independent from the load, so you can get those spot rates anywhere you need them. And now we're taking all that a step further by giving you the ability to take those output truck rates and then mark them up and then quote your customers using that quoted marked up rate. So really giving you the ability to automate the quoting process in a powerful way. All right, let's see this in action, but first a few setup steps. So on the rate entry, we've added a new rate method called RateIQ plus markup, which essentially just tells the system to find the RateIQ output sources from DAT and Truckstop and use those to mark up based on a markup that we find in the system. So that's all that's new on the rate entry. But then if you go to the carrier markup tab, we have a new field called markup basis. And there's two values that are possible here, either carrier quote or rate IQ. And for example, if you want to rate your rate IQ outputs a little higher than, say, your normal stored carrier quotes, you would be able to do that by simply deselecting the carrier quote value. If for whatever reason you say, nope, I want both to be the exact same markup, you would just select both and then just have the one individual carrier markup for both. So let's see this in action. So I've got a load here from Boston Beans to Chicago Cubs. And maybe this will be our year in Chicago, but we'll see. Now, once this loads on the RateIQ LWC, you're going to see that I've got a few different outputs that came through for spot quotes from DAT, from FreightWaves, and from Truckstop. It's roughly a little over $1,500. And now if I go to the FQA, we'll see that a customer quote was generated using that RateIQ output of $1,700 plus the markup that I created. So our customer would be quoted a little over $1,900 to move this lane, which again, this is fully automating that quoting process by all your users have to do is create that load. The system will then get the rates from your RateIQ partners, mark it up, and then be able to send the customer quote directly to your customers. And I'll talk about this a little bit more, but in that Artemis demo that I teased at the beginning of this webinar, we will do a full in-depth demo of how you can use this RateIQ markup feature in conjunction with Artemis to, again, fully respond to customer emails asking for a quote and actually providing them with a rate using our RateIQ outputs. So super powerful way to automate quoting for your customers. And then last but not least, if I click on the customer quote record and go to the details tab, we've added 3 new fields, RateIQ Freight, RateIQ Fuel, and RateIQ Total. And this is basically just the benchmarked rate that we got from your RateIQ data sources for what that quote cost was at the time of quoting. So this again is your costs that we got from RateIQ and that were used to mark up to generate this customer quote. So it's a really good just benchmark for your teams to know how much you were quoted at the time. So that's our RateIQ plus markup feature. As you can see, it's a super powerful tool in order to quote your customers faster and smarter. And just to tease that future Artemis webinar that you'll see shortly, we are going to be going in depth on how you can use this feature in conjunction with Artemis to provide those quotes to your customers directly. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And next up, I am super excited to introduce Katrina. She is a technical writer here at Revenova that actually is starting on our development team because she is a great coder as well, a side hobby that I wish I could get into. But she is going to show us the powerful appointment scheduling enhancements we made in Winter 26. Katrina, take it away.
Thanks, Alyssa. My name is Katrina Quinn, and I will be showing you our new feature for our brokers and fleet managers for automating our appointment schedules. So let's get started. So this new feature makes it much faster and easier to manage appointments. Before this enhancement, all appointment management had to be done externally to the TMS. Now we centralize all those activities into one spot for all users across your organization and provide a historical record of all your appointment-related activities. So there are 3 ways you can send appointment requests to your customers, shippers, or consignees. In the load detail LWC for individual requests, in the appointment console for batch requests, and automatically with the appointment requests job. In the load record, there's a new Send Appointment Request button in the load LWC. When you click on it, the Send Email modal appears with the appointment request email template and contacts with the appointment's transportation role as the email recipients. The appointment request expires by default in 24 hours, but it can be overridden using the default appointment request expiration field in the customer, shipper, consignee transportation profile. Once you send the appointment request email, a new section in the load detail LWC appears showing the history of the appointment request for the stop. To send multiple appointment requests at the same time, use the appointment console LWC and select the customer or shipper consignee accounts to view all loads associated with it and their appointment status. To show the toggle for appointment requests, check the Show Appointment Requester field in the TMS admin configuration. So toggle the email appointment requests on and select which loads you'd like to send the appointment request emails. Just like the load LWC, when you click on the Send Email Appointment Request button, the Send Email modal appears with the appointment request email template and contacts with the appointment's transportation role as the email recipients. When multiple loads are selected, they are all combined into a single email to prevent spamming appointment request emails. Also, just like the load detail LWC, once you send the appointment request email, a new section in the load detail LWC appears with the history of appointment requests for the stop. Outside the TMS, the email recipient can review the load requesting the appointment time and access the appointment email loop by selecting the Respond button. Here, the appointment contact can accept, decline, or propose a new appointment time for the loads listed in the email. The contacts can also send multiple proposals that the user can choose from. For example, we will confirm this one, decline, and propose a new time. So let's start at 7:30 a.m. And let's do another one in case 7:30 is not available at 9:45 to 10:30. Once they select the Save and Submit button, the TMS automatically updates the stop's appointment time to the appropriate load record. There we go. If the contact submits a proposed time, the user can confirm or decline the time directly in the TMS. For this example, we'll confirm for 7:30. If the requester reviews and confirms the proposed time, the appointment contact and the sender will receive an appointment confirmation email confirming the appointment date and time for the load. To make sending appointment request emails much easier, you can also run the appointment request job to automatically send emails with multiple loads to the appropriate contact. This job runs every 12 hours by default and can be explicitly configured such that the customers, shippers, and consignees and loads that the user wants to send are actually sent. And there you have it. The appointment request emails are automatically sent to the appointment contacts for their review. For more information on setting up your org to send and automate appointment requests, check out the appointment request setup article in the Revenova document base. There you have it. You have a faster, smarter, and fully automated way to manage your load pickup and delivery appointments. Back to you, Alyssa.
Thanks, Katrina. I know automating appointment scheduling is going to be a huge time saver for our users. All right, next up, you get 2 for the price of 1. We've got Scott, who you've already seen demo. I'm going to throw it in. He is a fellow Packer fan, so be nice to him. And James, who is on our quality assurance team. James works tirelessly with the rest of our quality assurance team to make sure that our releases are production ready. They are going to be taking you through our load locking enhancements. Guys, take it away.
Thank you, Alyssa. James and I wanted to take this time to show you guys the new functionality that we have around load locking within the TMS. For those of you who don't know, we have a load locking functionality that allows a user to lock a load down to allow themselves to be able to quote, tender, and assign a carrier to a load without another user hopping in and stealing that load from them, which is great for our customers who live in a competitive environment within their own organizations. We've added a few features that a lot of our customers have been clamoring for, and James and I are going to take the time to go through what those new features are. So jumping in, we tried to mimic a lot of the functionality that we have in the look from our previous load locking tool on the left side here. So an unlocked load is still going to be yellow. When you own the lock, it's still going to be green. And if someone else owns that lock, it's going to be red now. So you can see what this looks like. It's an unlocked load. Pretty basic functionality still. When you lock that load, it turns green. And then we've added the new renew lock and release lock functionality here. Something big that a lot of our consumers have been asking for is this new queue functionality as well. So the queue allows someone who is not owning that load lock to jump in, and they'll be next in line to get the load lock when the current load locking holder runs out of time or releases their load lock. So you can see on load L13 here, we actually have 2 people in the queue. That first user is always going to be the user who owns the lock. And then from there, you can see the additional people who are within that queue. Something else that we've added is we've added the ability to put a cap on the number of renews that a user has within the system here. We had customers who wanted to see that so that their users couldn't automatically renew that load lock as many times as they want. So I'm allowing this person to renew the load lock once here. And once I get that, you see that time jumps back up to that 45-minute mark, which most of you guys won't have that long of a mark. I just wanted to show it for our purposes here. And then if I try and renew that lock again, you'll see they get this error message that they've renewed too many times and they can no longer renew that load lock here. And then they have the ability to release the lock. So once that user releases the lock, it moves down in the queue here and it moves on to user, who is the next person within that queue. So all of that functionality is pretty basic for a non-load locking administrator. They can basically steal or lock the load for themselves. They can join the queue. If they own the lock, they can release the lock or they can renew the lock themselves. As a load locking administrator, we do give you a few more permissions, including seeing that load locking manager that James is going to show to you guys. And then on the individual load pages, they have additional abilities that they have as the load locking administrator that they can utilize for themselves. So we're going to jump in here. We can see the lock was passed here on L13. I'm going to jump back into a load here. Second user has L14 here. So you can see as a non-owner of the load lock, they do have the ability still to join the queue. And then they also have the ability to release the lock from that user. So if I were to join the queue, I can also release the lock to move on to the next person. So they kind of have that override privilege in case someone might be abusing that load lock. That load locking administrator can come in and they can say, hey, I'm going to release that lock to the next user within the queue. And then once I drop down that queue, we also have this pass lock functionality as well that's delegated to those load locking administrators. So they can jump into a load and say you have someone who might be abusing it. They might have, stolen the load lock somehow from another user. A load locking administrator could come in here and say, hey, I need to pass this lock to the next user because this second user might be away from their desk. Whatever the reasoning might be, they have the ability to hop in here and they can move that queue forward so that the process keeps on flowing for you guys as companies as well. So if I pass that lock to user, they now own that lock and you can see, that user owns the lock now. That's all the new functionality that we have within the load lock on the load page. I will pass it off to James now so he can show you the new cool functionality that we've added with the load lock manager tool within our system. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Scott. So I'm here to talk about the Load Lock Manager LWC. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show you what we're working with. First, let's talk about the filters up here. So these filters are going to be useful if you're dealing with many load locks. You could filter by the customer who's on the load, carriers who are assigned to it, sales statuses, load statuses, the ship date, and the delivery date. Along with those, we have lookup fields for the load name itself and for the user it was locked by. So something to note is that you can actually use these filters concurrently. So you could have multiple of them and it will show you any load lock that applies to. We think this is going to be useful for people who are dealing with many different load locks across many different customers, carriers, statuses, what have you. So let's take a look at some of these actions. You'll notice that here in the load lock columns, we have the unlock, pass lock, and queue action. You'll notice that queue is grayed out, but we will get to that later. First, let's take a look at these banner actions. Unlock and pass lock are here, just like they are down here. The idea here is that these are for when you want to apply these actions to multiple load locks. So if you select the Boolean for one or multiple load locks down here, this now becomes actionable. So we'll go ahead and select pass lock. And that brings up the pass lock modal. Here, you can go ahead and pass the lock over to any user you'd like, all in one place. And this updates in real time to show you that it is now locked by second user and when that lock ends. Worth mentioning is that the pass lock modal, when accessed here, is the same exact modal. It will only apply to the one load record that you're selecting the action for, as opposed to the one in the banner, which can apply to multiple load records. From here, you could also unlock loads where you just select it and the load lock is gone now. Now let's take a look at what the queue looks like. So we're going to go back to the load page. You'll see that the queue action is now actionable. And when you select it, it opens up a queue at the bottom for you to see. It shows the usernames, the order of which they are in the queue, and when they join the queue. And you can also pass locks here as well. And that's it. So to sum it up, this is an administrative tool that we built with the intention of having a one-stop shop for administrators to enact administrative duties on any load locks they might be dealing with. You can filter, pass, unlock, join, and view queues, and that's it.
Thank you both. I know I would have loved the ability to pass on locks to my coworkers at my previous brokerage. All right, so next up, I get to introduce Ryan, who is a member of our product management team here at Revenova, and he brings years of fleet experience, and he's been integral as we continue to build out our fleet offering here. He's going to take us through our MacroPoint tracking enhancements. Ryan, take it away.
Thanks, Alyssa. We do have some small but impactful upgrades for our MacroPoint users. We've got more flexibility and functionality around stop sequencing for MacroPoint. We have more fields that we send to MacroPoint to allow our users to better search their carriers in MacroPoint. And also, we do receive messages from MacroPoint around potential fraud, and we've added that to our load so our users can see that potential fraud. First up, with stop sequencing, we can go into the configuration, and we see that we do have a global using stop sequencing on. It defaults to on. We can also go into a load and turn stop sequencing on right from the tracking from MacroPoint. Now, what this stop sequencing does is it gives our users much more flexibility as to when to use stop sequencing on a load, when not to use stop sequencing on a load, and it also includes all stops in stop sequencing now. Before, we only did multiple stop loads, i.e. more than 2. Now, we're going to stop sequence everything on a load from MacroPoint. Next up, potential fraud. I know that fraud is on everybody's mind these days. So what we've done is we do get a message from MacroPoint when MacroPoint detects possible fraud on a load. What that looks like when we get the message from MacroPoint is we populate a potential fraud pill right here on the load, letting our users know, hey, MacroPoint sent us a message saying that this is potential fraud. The other place this populates is in the tracking log right here. It shows the type, which is driver event, comments, possible fraud detected. We got it from MacroPoint. We received it at X time. We see all these updates here. Now, obviously, getting a fraud notification is scary, but this is a very good upgrade for us from MacroPoint because we get a message from MacroPoint. We let our users know, hey, MacroPoint has detected possible fraud. And the next thing that our users should do is get back with MacroPoint and figure out what type of fraud that they've detected. So there we have it. Some small, like I said, but impactful upgrades to our MacroPoint users around stop sequencing, more fields sent to MacroPoint for better searching, and also the potential fraud upgrade. So I'll kick it back to Alyssa. Thank you.
Great job, Ryan. I know we're super lucky here at Revenova to have the partners that we do, and building out and continuing to enhance integrations like our MacroPoint integration is super important to continue strengthening those partnerships. So thank you for taking us through that. Now, next up I have Sarah, who is another new member of our product management team with decades of experience in the logistics industry, and she's really helped us build out our offering here at Revenova. And she is going to take us through our new web service that allows users and partners to upload documents into Revenova. Sarah, take it away.
Thanks, Alyssa. I'm excited to introduce our new feature regarding uploading documents. We already have a couple of other ways to upload docs, including manually, and then a couple of other productized integrations. However, this new project opens up our capabilities for our clients to use a variety of types of documents using our new web service. This enables users to easily store all the documents in the relative loads or other parts of the application. So in order to demonstrate this new functionality, I'm going to jump between our TMS and also an application called Postman. So starting with the load I've created, it's a full truckload going from Boston to Seattle. Looking at the Documents tab, I've already uploaded a bill of lading. So now we're going to jump over to this application Postman, which here is acting like an integrated off-platform document processing tool, similar to something your company might be using. I really want to highlight that with this new API, we need just a handful of fields to upload any document to any record within Revenova. It's that flexible. All you need is the record ID and relevant details. So let's dive in. First of all, the record ID. This can be one or multiple records. As long as it's the same object, like a load, you can upload the same document to multiple records. However, if it's a different object, like a customer quote or driver credentials, for example, that would need to be a separate file. Next up is the file name. So we've intentionally left this flexible, but if you are already using our customer invoice document functionality, then the file names need to match. Otherwise, you can use your own naming convention. File type. In this case, it's a PNG, but we've got so many choices for you here. It could be a JPEG, a CSV, DocX, even a PowerPoint. Next up is POD, true or false. If you're uploading a POD and you say true, then the system will automatically append POD to the file name. Next is portal access, true or false. This will dictate if your users can see the documents on the portal. And then last, we've got the data string that represents the document. So in this case, I'm uploading some damaged cargo. Unfortunately, in our industry, that happens. So I'll go ahead and upload this photo. So I've got confirmation here that the document's been added. Next up, I'm going to upload an email that I saved as a PDF, and this is an exam authorization. So as we know, with damaged cargo, it leads to more charges. It's helpful to upload all those documents to the file, so in the future, if people have questions, everything is contained within the load. So again, here's confirmation. Next up, I've got a delivery. It's a PNG, and you can see I've got POD as true here. So we'll load that. And then last, I'm going to change records, and we're going to go to driver credentials, and I'm uploading a photo of his license. So I've got the record ID is now a different one. It's a license, a PDF. POD is not true, so we'll send that. And now we'll jump back into the application to have a look. So you can see here in my driver credentials, I will refresh. There's my license. Let's have a look. And that is a very handsome driver. Okay, then going back into the load, I will refresh. We'll have a look at the documents. So you can see the 3 files that we just went through. So in this case, damaged cargo. It's always helpful to have a photo, especially for insurance claims. That doesn't look fun. Next up is that email authorization. Again, what I did is I saved that email as a PDF. So now it's here for against the load for easy reference. And last, we've got a delivery. You can see the system appended POD to it. We'll have a look there. And I think we can agree that was a great delivery to Seattle this winter. So again, highlighting with just a handful of fields, we could upload those documents. So again, this feature can be used in a variety of ways. I've shown you how easy it is to upload information to a load, but you could upload even a PowerPoint presentation to the account profile or customer quote information. Really, you have lots of choices, and we're excited to hear some of your use cases. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. I know that this new web service is going to make integrating with Revenova even faster and quicker for our partners. So super excited about that one. And then last but not least, we wanted to go through a few miscellaneous items that didn't necessarily require a demo, but we still wanted to highlight. For the full list and more details, be sure to check out the release notes on the Revenova Learning Center. First off, we have a powerful new enhancement for fleet users. If there's duplicate stops, those locations are now going to be automatically consolidated when they're sent to your telematics partners. And that's going to ensure that drivers see the one clear stop and ensure that arrival and departure tracking stays more accurate. We've got a few enhancements to the carrier portal visual force pages, which allow for an increased accuracy when quoting loads or creating truck postings. So again, there's more details on that one, but be sure to check out the Revenova Learning Center. The sales status now updates correctly on loads created from EDI 204s. And then last but not least, enhancing the TriumphPay audit integration to send accessorial line item details even when the accessorial charge is $0. Okay, next steps. Be sure to review the Winter 26 release notes and documentation on the Revenova Learning Center. They include more setup details and cover some items that we didn't have time to cover during the demos today. And after all that excitement, I know many of you are going to be really ready to get the Winter 26 release in your hands. So request that by reaching out to the Revenova help desk and have it installed in your sandbox for testing and then into production. Please keep the CRs coming. I know I speak for myself and the product team, but your feedback is super important to help us make the system even better. All right, let's transition to questions. So our first question is there a way for the scanner to be done depending on the product? For example, fleet versus brokerage. And to answer this one, I will transition to Dave.
Yeah, thanks, Alyssa. So the short answer is no, but the longer answer, which I'm known to give, basically the scanner itself outputs a list of fields and objects, right? So really by definition, you're kind of already getting scanner input based on the feature set that you're using. So if you're looking through the scanner and you see fleet related fields, then obviously those are fleet and you don't need to worry about them. Those would be for things like the fleet asset table, trip plans, that's another fleet object. So it's really kind of self-evident based on the objects and the fields that you're looking at, whether it's a fleet versus a brokerage security needs.
Cool. Okay, the next one is on the load lock feature. So what configuration settings do we have around setting number of renews a user gets for load lock, number of renews per individual load, number of renews for a given time period? Scott, I'm going to throw this one to you.
Sure. Yeah, really good question on that one. That's going to be on the user record where you can set the number of renews that they have. And that's going to be for an individual load lock. So when they own that load lock, that's how many renews they get. If they go out and don't lock that load anymore, come back in, they get those renews back.
Got it. Thanks, Scott.
Yep.
All right. So we have a question on the appointment setting LWC. So with auto appointment setting, how does web portal appointments work? Dave, I'm going to throw this one back to you.
All right. Yeah. So I guess kind of depends on your definition of web portal. I my assumption is we're talking about more of a shipper consignee. You log into Walmart's portal to schedule appointments through their online portal. Our appointment setting functionality is really kind of internal to the TMS, right? So it's your own internal appointment scheduling and setting functionality. So it's kind of the Revenova version of the web portal that your customers, shippers and consignees are logging into, or I should say not logging into. This is all part of the anonymous email loop, which is another nice feature about this. But web portal appointments, obviously, you would still need to log into those if you do have appointment setting needs in that regard. And again, really, this is more for managing those internal to the TMS using the tools that we provided.
Got it. Thanks. Okay. The other question we have is on the macro point feature. So can you explain the difference between having stop sequencing for macro point and not having it? As well as, can you provide an example scenario where I would want one versus the other, and what advantages versus disadvantages each has over the other? Scott, back to you.
Sure. Yeah, so stop sequencing essentially requires you to do the stops in order. So a scenario where you'd want it would be, the best example I could give is you have a two-load stop or a two-stop load. You want to go from the first stop to the second stop. You want to depart from that first stop first. However, you might have a truck that's going by that second stop to get to that first stop. If you don't have stop sequencing turned on, it's going to depart from that second stop before it actually departs from that first stop. So stop sequencing essentially requires you to do it in order. I haven't heard too many scenarios where you don't want it turned on. MacroPoint did acknowledge to us that they have customers who don't want stop sequencing turned on, though. So we wanted to give you guys the option to leave stop sequencing off if there is a situation where you don't want stop sequencing on. Hopefully that answers the question. It's a little bit complex, but definitely something that our customers wanted more functionality around with MacroPoint.
Yeah, makes sense. As we always say, there's always an exception. So I think being able to have that flexibility is nice. All right, we got another question on load lock. So when I create a load, then lock it, if I clone that locked load, will this subsequent load also be locked? Scott, go ahead.
That's another good question. No, it will not be locked. It'll just be an open load when it's cloned.
Cool. And then we just got a little bit of kudos for you, Scott. So good answering on that one. It did cover the question. So
beautiful.
Thank you. All right. I think that is all the questions we have. So thank you again for joining the Winter 26 webinar. I know this one was a huge release with lots of great features. So we really appreciate you tuning in. And then one last time to call out our user conference. Again, that is in June. Mike Marut threw in the link for registering for that. But if you have any questions, definitely reach out to your CSM, and hopefully we'll see you guys in June. But as always, appreciate you, and talk soon. Bye-bye.